Hello world, and welcome to Ctrl+Alt+Danominator. My name is Dan, and this is the device. Oh, would you look at that? It's review time. Oh geez, even the watch didn't like that. We're off to a good start today. I have a bit of an embarrassing pattern when it comes to smartwatches. Whenever I get a new one, I am all over it. I'm trying out the new software and the features and pushing as many apps and watch faces and games to it as I can. Yes, I game on smartwatches just to try them out. I think it's funny. I push these devices to their limits. I want to see everything they can do, and so I basically try everything on them for the first month, and then the watch goes on my wrist, and I forget about it. But that's not to say that I don't have good things to say or that I don't think that this is a profound piece of technology. No, I get the appeal of smartwatches. It's just, they're kind of meant to disappear, right? You're meant to put them on and they just kind of melt away. You don't have to think about it. Really, the only thing that matters is when you're getting notifications on them. And I still have a lot of respect for what this kind of hardware can do, but something about using a smartwatch and making it this thing that, I guess it's not even a secondary device, it's like a tertiary one, is kind of cool. Being able to just have all your notifications coming in right here is really handy. And it also makes you look less like a person who doesn't care. You know, we've all been at that kind of event or gathering where somebody's just always checking their phone, It looks really annoying. With this, you can just kind of look quick and then bam, shut it up, put it away. And it never leaves your wrist, so it never looks like you're overly distracted, and it's way less rude to just quickly peek at something on a smartwatch. This is actually pretty much how I use smartwatches in general, and I've actually gone to the logical extreme with it, you could say. So basically, at the start of the day, I'll put my watch on, I get all of my notifications, I read through whatever's new, I respond to anything on my phone, and then this stays on my wrist throughout the day. It vibrates whenever I get a notification, and my phone doesn't. My phone doesn't vibrate or beep like ever. I basically have it completely silent unless I'm in like a really crowded area or a city or something. My watch is my notification hub, and of course I still have my regular notifications coming through my phone with the little icons at the top of the screen. But every other time, I'm checking a smartwatch. And the best thing about this entire thing is that once I take this watch off and put it on its charger at the end of the day, that's it. Nobody can bother me anymore. It's really useful actually, to basically have all your notifications come to this little thing that you can take off whenever you want, leave at home if you don't want to deal with it for the day, really need to hyper focus on something, just take the watch off and you're done. That's it. No sounds. I flip my phone over, put it down on my desk or somewhere else, and I am completely out of the loop. And I really like that, honestly. Using this watch as a hub for notifications and any smartwatch that I've ever had is the best thing about these devices. It makes it so easy to hyper focus on something when you need to completely go into a different mode when you don't have a watch on. Everything changes. There's no sound, no vibrations coming from your phone. This is how I love to use these things. And this smartwatch has been the definition of a perfect notification hub for me because, to be honest, it doesn't really know how to do much else at this point. It doesn't have the advanced tracking features of the later Galaxy watches. It doesn't have AI on it, thank goodness. It doesn't really have anything special else going on about it, but it is great at that one thing that it does. It's also great at being enormous. I mean, oh my goodness. I kind of forget how it looks sometimes, but man, I talked about smartwatches disappearing. This thing sure doesn't. And so today we're going to be talking about how this Galaxy watch has held up over the years, because believe it or not, it's pretty old. As a matter of fact, I believe it came out in, oh shoot, I forgot. Wait a second. Samsung Galaxy Watch 3 release date? Oh, 2020. You gotta be kidding me. Really? 6 years old. 6 years old now. That's insane. I thought it was younger. Man, okay. I got this watch in 2022, so at least for me, we are working with a 4-year-old smartwatch here, which is actually kind of impressive. I know it should be obvious at this point that a lot of tech, after a few years, it's kind of replaceable or it might be a little slower or anything, but for smartwatches, they tend to have shorter lifespans, I've noticed. it really does depend on how you take care of them and how many hits they take over the years or how durable they are. So we're going to be talking about this thing a lot today, and whether or not it's worth getting one in this year, we'll get to that. But there's a lot of things I want to cover because I really do like this watch. I have some things to criticize, but overall, I'm looking forward to talking about it. I do feel I should give a little bit of added context though, because my first smartwatch was this thing, the Pebble Time. Man, this is such a cool watch. I love this thing. It's honestly kind of insane how much personality and usefulness, like just general productivity, they packed into a watch that doesn't even have a touchscreen. This was the smartwatch before Galaxies took over, and I have a lot of respect for the software, the UI, the battery life on these things is incredible because it's an e-ink display, and that also contributes to the personality of the animations. But the main thing you need to know is that I used this as my first smartwatch experience, and I waited for like a long time to make my new watch a Galaxy watch. And I decided on this one because I could get it at a good price at the time. I got this in 2022 again, so 4-year-old watch and not a 6-year-old watch, but the model is 6 years old. This is even older, if you can believe it. I actually don't have my original Pebble Time with me right now because I am treating it like the most fragile piece of glass you can imagine. It is so busted up. But this is actually the second Pebble Time I got back when they were starting to sell out and disappear. Now, if the new Pebble Time reviews really well, that one does have a touchscreen and a little bit of extra functionality. So if it does well, you might see it on the channel at some point. But don't worry, the original Pebble Time is gonna get a video too, because man, I just love this. This set the standard for smartwatches for me personally, and that's the reason I'm telling you all this. I feel like it gives added context. I actually used this with an iPod Touch before I got a smartphone, and then it was on my Moto G stylus, and by the time I got my S23 Ultra, I had a Galaxy watch. But I got a lot of years out of this thing, and I'm still kind of impressed at how well it works and runs for the most part. So as you can imagine, when I got this about 4 years ago, the Galaxy watch was gonna have a lot to live up to, and for the most part, I think it absolutely did. So let's start talking about it with the general performance. Unfortunately, we're kind of starting with the weakest category for the Galaxy Watch 3 because honestly, it really does not run super well anymore. You can actually see when I start turning the gear here and I go from panel to panel, it's pretty smooth, but the moment I start moving it quicker, it starts to struggle and then eventually it has to just kind of catch up for a second. But overall, it isn't too bad. It does tend to lag, and I have noticed over the years every now and then, it almost seems like it just needs to have a crash. This doesn't happen very often, fortunately. It's like every few weeks, maybe I'll be scrolling through a lot of notifications at once or something, and the watch just goes black for a minute and needs to restart, and then it's perfectly fine after a few minutes, but it is a little annoying when it happens. This was actually the last Galaxy watch before Google and Samsung started to get really buddy-buddy, and so the next Galaxy watch basically just ran on Wear OS. This one runs on Tizen, and the software is, it's all right. It's definitely got some issues. I'm afraid that over time, it's definitely slowed down a bit. You can see when I go from things really quickly, it does start to lag and it needs to catch up a little bit, but at the very least, it tries to keep up. I generally don't have many performance issues with this. It's more so every now and then it just kind of needs to have a crash, I guess. I'm not really sure what causes it. Sometimes I think it's because I have a lot of notifications I have to go through at once or something, and then the watch will just go black for a second and it'll restart. And after that, it's fine, but for every now and then, and again, this is maybe every few weeks, I might be left without a watch for a few seconds because the thing is just restarting, and sometimes it's even up to a minute or two, which isn't generally a problem. But if I'm in the middle of reading notifications, yeah, that's kind of annoying. And I know it's not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it's a watch. I need it to be able to do a thing quickly, and then I just move on. So it is kind of worth mentioning that, because while the general performance of this thing has held up pretty well, I can read through notifications and everything just fine, that is an occasional issue you might come up with because the software on this thing, and especially the chip it was made with, are just okay. Outside of that though, the general performance is pretty much okay. I can launch apps fairly quickly. I don't generally need to use any of these apps. You can see I haven't even granted storage permission to my voice recorder. but it does do everything it needs me to do, which again, mainly has just settled into being my notification reader. So I can't complain about it too much, but it is worth noting that the thing does kind of get overwhelmed easily if you're trying to do a lot of stuff on it. But while we're here, we might as well talk about it. Man, look at that screen. It's held up really well. Now you can actually sort of tell I've put a little screen protector on this. It's very hard to see because it fits perfectly in this circle. I just wanted to do that for a little bit of extra durability, and I mean, hey, screen hasn't cracked yet, so it must be doing its job. But just looking at the display, this thing is impressively bright. Now, I do believe it only runs at 30 Hertz, so that could also be why when I'm moving things quickly, it appears to lag more. But the display itself is really pretty, and I get to talk about these watch faces later because Tizen had some really cool options for making your own watch face. But overall, I really can't complain about this display. The best thing about it is the auto brightness. It is still really consistent from the moment I got it to today. The best thing about auto brightness to me is when it's on a device like this that's on your wrist. Almost nothing else that I use has auto brightness on because honestly, it just kind of bugs me. I don't know why I'm like this. I just like my screens to be consistent, so I don't mind swapping the brightness up and down manually if I have to, but with a watch, I mean, why would you want to change the brightness on this thing? You just want to be able to quickly look at it and move on with your life. The coolest thing about something like this is that it's controlled by your arm. So if you just have trouble reading a notification, you just point your thing to the sun and it gets brighter. That's one of the coolest things about having auto brightness on a small device like this. And it is very consistent, very reliable. Every time it activates, I can read exactly what's on the screen and then I move on. So yeah. The display on this is pretty good, all things considered. Next thing I want to touch on is the software. I think it's pretty all right. Again, this is Tizen, and I guess there are some things Wear OS does a little better, and I do kind of wish that some of those things have made it over to here. But again, the watch is already getting a little stressed out as it is. So mainly all I need it to do is view notifications, but I will say navigating through this thing is pretty smooth, and all of that is thanks to this gear wheel, man. I love this feature. It is such a cool idea, and I really don't know why Samsung kills it off for every other generation, only to bring it back later. The gear wheel is one of the best innovations I think Samsung ever added to watches, especially because it gets rid of the middleman. If you don't want to use the touchscreen, or you're wearing gloves or something, just being able to turn this is so easy, especially when you get a notification. You just look up here, it's automatically open, you can scroll through it quickly, and then again, bam, close it. And that's it, you're good to go. This is one of the best things about this watch, and I'm really glad that it's remained on future models, even though they skip it every other year. That bothers and annoys me a lot, but getting through here is pretty snappy. Now, I don't really have much else to say about the software of this watch because honestly, there's nothing special about it. It's not Wear OS, there's no AI on it, thank goodness, and I really don't need it to do much else. But you can see here, I can very easily close apps. I can get over to all of the apps that I need if I ever use them. Granted, I really don't use these much anymore, but they are handy to have here in case you need them, especially if you want to take a phone call on this thing. We'll talk about that in a moment, but overall I have to say the software is pretty cool, especially this rotary dial thing that they have going on. I know that Samsung eventually added this kind of feature to the Galaxy watches that didn't have a gear, so you just kind of spin your finger around the edge of the touchscreen and it'll vibrate as if it's using a gear wheel. And I mean, that's okay, but come on, man, you can't beat this. The software and hardware working together to make this feel like such a tactile thing is just so reminiscent of the Galaxy Watch and basically nothing else. It's its own thing. It's very special in that way. Seeing as we're talking about the gear wheel, I might as well bring up the durability of this guy. You can see over the years, this watch has taken some hits, especially on the wheel itself. It has started to get a lot of little nicks in it, and I mean, it doesn't look as presentable as it once did, but man, honestly, despite that, this has held up really well otherwise. I'm amazed at how well the Galaxy Watches hold up over time. I know we have the Ultra now, which is supposed to be the ultra durable watch, but man, I can't complain. I am a bit of a clumsy person, admittedly sometimes. I have bonked this thing against more surfaces than I like to admit, But guess what? Everything I bonk this against the surface loses. I've left more nicks in things than this watch has received damage. I'm amazed at how overall durable this is, especially because it's got a giant glass screen and a rotatable piece up front, and then scratchable metal on the back. Now, I do believe that this has taken a little tiny bit of damage. There might be a small scratch on it, you can kind of see it there, but it hasn't affected anything. This thing still reads my steps and heart rate, so it hasn't taken any physical damage that's affected how it works, so I really can't complain about that. And again, 4 years with this watch. I've ran with it, I swim with it, I've kind of taken it everywhere. This is one of the devices I've roughed up the most, and I tend to baby everything. So despite getting a glass screen protector on this, which you can barely see, I haven't really needed to protect this any other way, and it still works just fine. The only other thing I really want to mention about the physical aspect of the watch is keeping the gear wheel clean. You might be surprised, over time, these things will start to gunk up a lot, but if you occasionally put a small piece of paper in between your wheel and the watch, or even there's a YouTube tutorial you can follow to take the wheel off completely and just clean it out a little bit and plop it back on, it is amazing how just doing that once will make your watch feel completely new. I've seen a couple, and I really do mean only a few, complaints about this watch occasionally just getting to be a pain to use after a while. The wheel doesn't spin as well anymore, but then they clean the watch wheel and it feels like the watch is completely new again. So just keep that in mind if you get one of these, even one of the newer Galaxy watches. If there's a way to clean those, I sure hope there is. If you can do that, you can keep your watch feeling and running mostly like new, except for the occasional software lag, for a really long time. Believe it or not, there is audio to talk about on this. Yeah, Galaxy Watch 3 did indeed have a speaker, and this is not the most high quality track to listen to, but I am still amazed at how loud this thing can be. Now, obviously, I wouldn't listen to music on this when I have other stuff like Bluetooth speakers laying around. However, when you do have a notification coming in, it's pretty solid. And especially if you ever want to have a phone conversation on your wrist, the audio is just loud enough that you can hear someone decently well. I will say there is a little bit of speaker buzzing, and the audio quality could be better because this is transferring audio from your phone via Bluetooth over to a watch. It's only gonna be so good, but I have managed to hold plenty of decent conversation with someone on this thing, even having two people talking to the same person on the watch and them responding from here. I don't do it often, but if you really need to be hands-free and you don't have something Bluetooth nearby, this will perfectly suffice. It does the job, honestly, all these years later. I do wonder if over time I've blown out the speaker just a little bit because it's not as high quality as it used to be, which really sucks. But again, this is from a much older piece of tech before the speakers started getting really high quality on small things like this, so I can't complain too much. One more thing about the software I want to mention, and this is the thing I'm going to miss the most. Man, Tizen had some really cool custom watch faces. Now, I don't really know much about how these were developed, but I do know about Facer. Facer is a pretty popular one. I do have a lot of great watch faces on this, but some of the ones that were just included as downloadable stuff or purchasable items in the Galaxy Store, some of these are so nicely animated and people put a lot of detail into them. Unfortunately, none of these can be carried over to a Wear OS watch. They're just stuck here forever, which really sucks. I love so many of these, and once I stop using a Galaxy Watch, or at least one from this generation, that's it. I just have to move on, and I hate that. But, oh man, I'm kind of impressed at how nice these look still, how well they're animated. I will say if you have a really pretty one that has a lot of moving parts, like that gear one that I was showing off earlier, I do believe that affects performance a little because the processors and chips in these things were not really good. But honestly, I don't think they've gotten especially better in the newer Galaxy watches. I don't know. I hear that the Ultra and the 8 Classic have a really good chip in them, so maybe they're better, but I've also heard their battery life is like bad. So just keep that in mind. You can have a really nice, pretty, fancy watch face, but you're gonna have to buy it from the Galaxy Store if you want it, and the performance is probably gonna be impacted at least a little bit. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I just really like having live wallpapers on everything, and this is basically as close as you can get to having a live wallpaper on a watch. But I mean, hey, come on, you can't complain about that. Come on, it's a rabbit. You can't complain about the rabbit. You can try, but don't do it. I'll find you. Only one more thing to talk about, and that is the battery life. It is bad. I mean, mind you, I have had this watch for 4 years, and I've gotten more than a day's battery life for, I'd say, about 3 of those years. Last year is when I really started to notice this thing was barely making it to the end of the day, and sometimes if I start my day really early and put the watch on early and I'm going through notifications a lot, by the end of the day, it's usually dying or dead. However, on a normal day when I am barely pushing this and just looking at it occasionally, I get a full day's battery life. That is not bad, and considering that I actually do happen to use the always on display, I can't complain about that. I believe a watch should always be able to tell the time, which is why always on display is very important to me. On the newer Galaxy watches, I have heard that they kind of struggle to last a full day with the always on stuff. And I don't know if that's because of the Wear OS software or because of the AI stuff that's running in the background. I really don't know. But if a watch can do this, and then I can turn it to see the full watch face, go here for notifications, and then slap back to just a regular time display with no animation, and I can do that for the entire day and still get a full day's worth of battery life out of it, this is a success to me. This is a good watch. So overall, I'm decently impressed with how well this thing has held up. So what do you do if you want one of these for yourself? Well, the first thing you might want to know is that these are really not supported anymore. The Tizen smartwatches have been completely phased out at this point, which I really dislike because I would have loved to bring more features and especially those watch faces over to something new, but you just can't do it because that would be fun. So unfortunately, it's kind of not really the greatest idea to get one of these anymore, which I really don't want to say, but honestly, especially if you're getting one of these used, the battery life is probably taking a hit, the performance is rougher, and overall, you're just not going to get a very well supported watch that can occasionally have a few issues or might need a little restart. I don't know if the newer Galaxy watches crash. I've barely seen any reports on how they perform. People don't really talk about the Galaxy watches honestly much anymore. Right now, everybody's talking about the Pebbles, and they tend to last for like multiple days. So how much would you pay for one of these? I don't know. I feel like 50 to 100 at most, and even that might be saying a little much. So when it comes to what one of these watches is worth, it depends on how much you're going to get out of it. You could be like me when you first get it and put it up here, try to do as much as you can with it. I mean, I used to use this as a camera remote shutter, and unfortunately I had to use an external app for that because back in the day it wasn't built into the phone. But I did that. I even once used the gyro in this thing as a mouse to control my phone as an experiment for fun. That was another app that was made for this. But over time, I just used it for my notifications. That's really all it does anymore. And if that's all you need it to do, this will probably get you a day's worth of battery life. It'll probably last, and you get some cute watch faces out of it. So yeah, I'd say if you really want one of these and you're trying to save some money, I'd say 50 to 100 at best, but just keep in mind the performance is definitely going to be hampered a little bit, and you're probably not going to get a full day's worth of battery life unless you keep the background tasks on the watch to a minimum. But overall, that is my review of the Galaxy Watch 3. I still kind of think this thing is great, even though it has taken a hit over the years. I'm surprised at how decently well it's held up. Now, would I compare it to something like my Galaxy Tab S7 that I reviewed earlier this year? No. Unfortunately, this thing hasn't held up as well as I would have liked it to, but it's still a decent device, and I'm used to its quirks by now. Keep that in mind. I'm the kind of person where no matter how old something gets, if it still works, I'm still gonna use it. So I have no reason to stop using this, but I'm not super interested in the newer Galaxy watches because they don't seem to be lasting any longer than this does. So why would I upgrade? Why would I get a new one? Every now and then I've kept an eye out for Galaxy Watch 8 Classic deals, so maybe eventually I'll get one and I'll talk about it on the channel. But until then, I don't know, man. It's just gonna bother me with Galaxy AI stuff anyway. I really don't care about a smartwatch having extra stuff like that, especially AI. So this does everything I need it to for now, and honestly, I think the new Pebble Times are gonna be more worth my money, but we'll have to see how they review. And yeah, that's it. I don't know how to keep this in frame during my outro, so I guess I'll just wear it. Back to the regular hands. I don't know how to do outros. Gang, if you still have a Galaxy Watch 3, please tell me about it. I'm really curious to see if anyone else has had this kind of performance or battery. Maybe the watch has held up better for you, and if you have any tips for me, please let me know. I love this thing and I want to get as many more years out of it as I can. Who knows? Maybe I'll review it again next year. But until then, of course, this is Ctrl+Alt+Danominator signing off. See you later, tech heads.